politics are is a different law than the rest of Israel. Right? We're talking about one area that has civilian law, right, where people have the right to vote, where people have a political power, where people can go out to the street and demonstrate, and it's legal. In the West Bank, it's army law, it's martial law, and it's not by the people for the people, it's by Israel for Israel. Now, of course, this is every occupation, this isn't new. But two important things we have to remember. First of all, is this has been going on for 45 years. And as we see on the ground, and this is part of what we're trying to show with the book, there's no exit strategy. We're working on the ground with no end in sight. The second thing is, we started for different reasons, ideological reasons, security reasons, some people would say, to mobilize Jewish communities from Israel into the West Bank. And when we started to mobilize them, we created a situation that de facto there is never a possibility for equality. Because you're talking about 350, together with East Jerusalem, half a million Jewish settlers that are under Israeli civilian law. And 2.5 million Palestinians that are under army law, under martial law. Right? They'll never be equal. If you have two people meeting in the heart of Hebron, both in the same exact moment pick up a rock and throw it at each other, but one is Palestinian and one is Israeli, the Israeli would be tried under civilian law. Right? The Palestinian will be tried as a terrorist, doing the exact same thing. Now we can go on and give more examples with mistreating of children, right? Which a Palestinian child will not be treated the same as an Israeli child because there's a different law. That's where we understand that there'll never be equality, and there will always be, you could call it racism, and I think this is part of the story. And the bottom line, there's the idea of differentiating between two populations is part of the story, and part of what we talk about in the book that I'm here to promote is the idea of separation. This is the second chapter of the book. Most people really think that we're spending most of our time separating Israelis from Palestinians, but that's only part of what we're doing. They're already separated by law, but we're also doing another thing, which is separating Palestinians from Palestinians. And that's actually what we're spending most of our time doing. And this idea of separation is already implemented on the ground. When we actually broke down what we see the occupation is into 4 pillars. Right? The occupation is a chair, the 4 legs of the chair, where these are actually terms that most soldiers know about, and actually even most Israelis know about, but they're referred to in a positive connotation. The first one is prevention. Right? You prevent something bad from happening to someone good, can't be bad. Separation, like I mentioned. Most of the international community is talking about a 2-state solution. That's separation. Isn't initially evil, right? We can debate if it's the right solution or not, but the third is fabric of life, allowing the Palestinians to maintain their fabric of life. Sounds excellent. And law enforcement. And what we try to do in the book is actually to break that down and to discover what these terms actually mean. In Hebrew, the word prevention means sikul. When you tell an Israeli sikul, the first thing that comes to mind is sikul memukad, targeted prevention, which is the best way to translate that, or targeted killing, assassinations. You have a ticking bomb scenario, Palestinians strapped with a bomb to him, leaving a big Palestinian city to a major Israeli city. It isn't new. This happened during the Second Intifada. I remember, being scared driving on buses in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. This is something that we remember, and we have to stop this ticking bomb scenario. And we use this tool, which is called targeted killing, assassinations. This, I think, most of Israelis will agree is something we have to do. But this already went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, you can use this tool as targeted assassinations only in the case of a ticking bomb scenario. But this is only the tip of this idea. We actually made it wider and wider and wider. And we continued on using this tool of targeted assassinations and killing people that aren't a ticking bomb scenario, but could be involved in violence, could be involved with what Israel sees as terror against Israelis or settlements, and are definitely people that Israel could arrest, but we couldn't get our hands on them, so we assassinate them. Right? This is taking us the next level down, of course, with no trial, but it doesn't end there. Right? We also assassinate people for different reasons, political reasons. It happened in Gaza many times. And the widest idea of this idea of prevention, or targeted prevention, is actually revenge killings. And we know about a dozen revenge killings. One of the famous ones is in February 19th, 2002. In a checkpoint near Ramallah called En Arik, 6 Israeli soldiers were killed by Palestinians. The next night, 3 different units were launched to 3 different places, 2 in the West Bank, 1 in Gaza. The orders they got: this is a revenge attack. Everyone standing in a checkpoint at a specific time at night, you shoot to kill. At the end of the night, 15 Palestinian policemen were found dead. Now, this isn't a local officer's decision. This is at least the chief of staff, if not higher. There was a piece in one of the Israeli newspapers talking about this. But this is only one example of the idea of prevention. And we managed to take this very tip of idea of prevention, for example, arrests, make it wider and wider. So we first arrest the people we thought we have to arrest, then we arrest their neighbors or their cousins, and then we have mass arrests, right? Arresting everyone between 18 and 35. But the biggest idea of prevention that affects every Palestinian is what we call having our presence felt. And how do you have your presence felt? You're there every minute. Every Palestinian, doesn't matter what he's involved in, doesn't matter what he does for a living, he has to know you're right here. When we talk about entering houses, besides the fact that we're using the houses as military outposts, this is another way to have our presence felt. It's another way to show that we're always there.
Well, another pillar is separation, and of late more and more commentators, some of whom Israeli commentators, have said, you know, this is the same idea as apartheid, separation, apartheid, separate. What's your comment on that?
Well, I didn't live in South Africa under apartheid. I don't know what it really looks like. I read about it in books. What I know and what we're experts in is the Israeli occupation. Now, I can't say I don't have the legal background. I don't have the historical background to say if legally this is what it is or if it isn't. What I can say is this is what it looks like, and this looks very bad. When we talk about the idea of separation, this is definitely part of what is happening in the West Bank today. I think that focusing and trying to find out if this is apartheid or isn't apartheid is pushing us away from the real issue, which is this is occupation, this is what it looks like, this is what it means to be a soldier that's conducting occupation, this is what it means to be a Palestinian living under occupation. Let's deal with that. When we talk about separation, one of the cities that we deal with, that we're in almost 4 times a week, is a city called Hebron, which I mentioned. And in the heart of Hebron, we're actually separating Israelis from Palestinians. Besides the fact that we separated both sides of the city, the Israeli part, there's still 30,000 Palestinians and 700 Jewish settlers. And the heart of the city, right, what used to be the biggest market in Hebron, is actually a road which is a sterile road, which means Palestinians are not allowed to walk on this road. There's actually people living in the houses on top of this road. Used to be 30 families, now only 5 are left. But they can't even leave the front door of their house. Now, in my perspective, not only that this has nothing to do with the Israel that I want to be proud of, this has nothing to do with the Judaism I believe in, and this has nothing to do with taking us towards a solution. Now, the answer to what my claims are could be, well, this is security. And what can you do for security? This is what you have to do. The last Israeli killed in Hebron was in 2003. Right? The peak of the Second Intifada, which I mentioned earlier, was a very difficult time, to say the least, both for Israelis and for Palestinians. And maybe the idea then was, okay, let's separate the two communities. Of course, we have to remember that the idea of separation started with Goldstein's massacre in 1994. We won't get into that, but it wasn't only the separation didn't start with Palestinian violence in Hebron. actually started with Jewish terror and Jewish violence, which is important to say. But when we talk about what is happening today in Hebron, October 2012, or almost 2013, almost 10 years after the last Israeli killed in Hebron, we're still talking about 1,800 stores shut down on military orders. We're talking about 70% unemployment. We're talking about Palestinians not being allowed to walk on some streets, drive in some streets, or open stores in streets. And we're actually pushing them into a different part of the city, which theoretically, again, could be legitimate if we're saying you could live there and we could live here. But what we're seeing all over the West Bank, and Hebron is only a microcosm of that, is that we're slowly pushing Palestinians into smaller areas, what is called Area A and Area B, which are together less than 40% of the West Bank. Okay? So it doesn't matter what our viewers or what your opinions are, if we should have a one-state or a two-state, but any sort of solution regarding this, regarding or will bring us to end the occupation, has to acknowledge the fact that we can't allow more illegal outposts to be built while pushing Palestinians out of Area C. It's the biggest part of the West Bank, more than 64%, and we're actually slowly but surely making sure there won't be Palestinians there and de facto annexing the land.